briefing. Having a look at some other stories there, the third India-Africa Summit had concluded in Delhi with an overwhelming response from the African leaders. ANN7 spoke exclusively to President Jacob Zuma on the future of the summit, mutual trade between India and South Africa, and the Chinese role in the continent.
President, welcome to ANN7. My first question to you is that experts say that India-South Africa trade ties seems to be stagnating instead of growing. Now, what are your views on that?
Well, I think the bigger obstacle that has been there has been the economic meltdown globally. That affected anything in terms of the growth, so to speak. And I think what has happened is that I think everybody has accepted the fact that the slow growth is there. So what do we do within the slow growth so that we can try, firstly, to cushion the low growth, but also find ways and means of making it to grow? I would blame that in the main, more than anything. That, of course, has made us to open our eyes even more wider, to say, where can we try to link up for the growth? And then, of course, our relations with India becomes even more important from that point of view, because we share a lot of ideas and a lot of things and understanding. I think that, to me, it would be the economic meltdown has been responsible for stagnation or low growth.
President, one very important question which has been doing rounds in South Africa also. There has been growing criticism of alleged Chinese neo-colonial tactics within South Africa. Now, even ANC NGC has called for the need for greater caution. Now, does that make the ANC government see India as an alternative source of infrastructure?
Well, I'm not sure about Chinese colonial approach, and I know there's been a talk of that nature. I don't know, because we have been working with China. We've been understanding China is a big economy, and we've been working with them. We know they've got their own interests. We got our own interests as well. We are not looking at India, in a sense, replacing China, so to speak. We are looking at India as a partner that comes in, that will get the same kind of possibilities like China, helping us. I was talking earlier with the issue of the infrastructure, for an example. Now, China has been the only country, really, that, if you leave aside the companies in South Africa that are South Africa grown, if you go up Africa, China has been the only country that has built infrastructure on the continent. I don't think that is colonizing. That is actually enabling Africa to be able to function. Colonies came, they did not build anything. They were there to take everything they wanted to take. China invests, and China discusses, and China is doing things. For an example, besides anything, President Xi in the United Nations announced a number of amounts that is being given to Africa to protect itself. It said there's no colonial country did so in the past. This is a kind of a friendly country that says, here we are, we see that we've got difficulties, we can give you so much. And I'm just dealing with this issue because particularly this kind of talk comes from the Western countries, who think that China is replacing them. But all we are saying, the Western countries came by force and took Africa. China comes as a country, developing country, to interact with us, to do business with us, and also allow us, in fact, including partnering with our companies. Now, I don't know where the kind of colonial talk comes from, and I've really answered some of the Western countries on this issue, because Africa has opened up for the markets. And Chinese markets are coming. They are not coming. Part of the reason is that they are old economies. They're no longer growing very fast. And they've had a lot. They developed because of what they took from Africa. They never brought anything back. I don't think the comparison should actually be made, because China has been operating in a friendly manner. For an example, we are in BRICS with China, and we're doing that kind of business. And when BRICS came to South Africa, China, Russia, India, Brazil had no difficulty to meet the leaders of the African continent to discuss business. Already, that kind of process has been taken forward. What happened to the Western countries? They met in Berlin, discuss how to divide Africa among themselves. So I don't understand this idea that China has colonial tendencies. It's not. I just thought I should explain this matter better so that it is clear to everyone. We are very clear as Africans what we are doing. We see benefits from interacting with China, interacting with India. For an example, if we are developing relations with India, India itself comes from a colonial situation. In no way can India act as a colonizer. So we are looking at these user-friendly relations wherein we are benefiting, also our partners are benefiting.
President, since we're talking about BRICS, now despite the BRICS and the IPSA and the increased injection of Indian investment in capacity building in South Africa, now South Africa has not shown significant result on the ground. So what do you think is preventing the cooperation from taking off?
IPSA has been there and it was working very well, but the economic meltdown has been a major factor, not only between India and South Africa. You know, Europe has been almost under for a long time, and these are huge, big, old economies. They couldn't resist the economic meltdown. So that has been the factor. The fact that we took decision to establish IPSA, it indicates our intention, what we need to do. I'm sure that if there were no these bubbles of economy, would be very far in terms of how that would have developed, particularly added the issue of BRICS.
The one very important issue which is there between India and South Africa, President, is there's a conflict of interest between South Africa and India over the expansion of United Nations Security Council. Now, especially from the perspective of European Union, taking a dim view of the G4 formation. Now, that doesn't represent African aspirations. So how do you propose to deal with it?
What we are dealing with is the transformation of the United Nations. Many kind of areas. We talk about financial institutions internationally are not transformed. They need to be transformed in broader terms. When it comes to the United Nations, it is basically the Security Council that is a critical element of the United Nations that does not want to transform. There are countries that are members of the Security Council. Some of them very small. If you take one region, for an example, is represented by 3 countries, very small in terms of population, etc. India has a huge population. Africa has a huge population. Now, it doesn't make sense that these countries, who are not just having big populations, you are also seeing a democracy coming into these countries. Why these countries can't be represented? Why can't they have a voice? So it's not a question of competing. We're not competing. We are saying there are countries that ought to be part of the Security Council, and that those countries should be opened. People could work out what is it that determines the countries to be there is a different matter. So we are supporting India to become a member. We've got no problem with it. But we are saying Africa must be represented sufficiently too, not just by one country. Why should we have small countries really having the more right to decide about huge countries, it's also not in keeping with the democratic principles. How could few millions of people decide for billions of people? It's not in keeping with democracy. So there are many things that need to be talked about and be clarified. If we have to work out a new kind of conditions, how you become a member, whatever, let there be. You can't have the rules of 1940-something governing people of 2015. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So that's an issue. So there is no competition between India and South Africa, or Africa for that matter. We are all saying, let there be a fair representative in the Security Council. If at all the veto remains, let those other countries be given a veto. They are as responsible as other countries. If the veto goes away, well, it goes away. We remain with simple majority or whatever, or two-thirds. All we are saying, no longer can we tolerate that huge populations are controlled by smaller populations.
There are opportunities for South African companies to also set up a shop in India, and with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi launching the Make in India campaign. Now, what has South Africa done or will do in order to be a part of this campaign and go ahead with it?
Well, it has just been launched. That's a matter that we are then looking at. How do we make how do we take advantage of that? That's part of the opportunities that are opening in terms of the relationship. We then have to work out the mechanisms, how this is going to be done to benefit both sides.
President, my concluding question is, we would like to know, everybody would like to know, is that what are the African nations taking back from this India-Africa Summit 2015?
I think there was a great deal of appreciation of what we are doing, and an appreciation of the point that we need to give more thought in this relationship so that we can take advantage of from both sides. I think they are taking a lot. They also took a lot from the manner in which Prime Minister Modi addressed the session, because he was quite very clear and very frank about what he was saying. And I think African countries feel in India we have a friend. We have a country with which we could indeed develop our relations, develop our economies. This is a brother country, as everybody in Africa feels.
President, thank you very much for giving your valuable time to NN7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.